The night my wife came back from her girls' cruise to the Caribbean, she walked through our front door glowing like sunlight had fallen in love with her. She had that fresh vacation tan. Her nails were done in some coral color she knew I liked, and she smiled at me like 7 days apart had made her miss me. I remember she dropped her suitcase by the stairs, wrapped her arms around my neck, and kissed my cheek like nothing had changed. Like her mouth hadn't spent a week whispering lies in another man's ear. Like my heart hadn't already been ripped open by everything I found while she was gone. And the worst part? She looked relieved. Relieved because she thought she got away with it. She thought she could come home to the same man who kissed her goodbye at the same husband who carried her bags, filled her gas tank, and tucked a handwritten note into her luggage that said, "Come back to me safe. Have fun. I love you." She had no idea that by the time she stepped into that house, I had already buried my marriage, and I had made sure the only thing waiting for her was the truth. My name is Caleb Warren. My wife's name was. We'd been together 11 years, married for 6, and if you saw us from the outside, you'd swear we were one of those couples who made it. We weren't flashy. We weren't posting perfect selfies every weekend. We were just steady. Real, the kind of marriage built on routines so familiar they start to feel sacred. She drank her coffee with too much vanilla creamer. I set her side of the bed warmer than mine because her feet were always cold. Every Sunday we ordered takeout from the same Italian place and argued about what movie to watch until we ended up rewatching something we'd both already seen. That was us. Or at least that's what I believed. Vanessa worked as a dental hygienist. I owned a small home renovation company with my older cousin. The work was hard, but it was ours. It paid the bills, kept food on the table, and let us buy the little craftsman house in Savannah, Georgia, 2 years after we got married. We had plans. We talked about kids all the time, even after life took more from us than either one of us ever admitted out loud. 3 years ago, Vanessa got pregnant. We didn't tell many people, just our parents, and we wanted to wait until it felt safe. It never got to feel safe. She lost the baby at 10 weeks. I still remember sitting on the cold bathroom floor with her, holding her while she cried into my shirt, both of us pretending we were going to be okay because the other one needed us to be. After that, something changed in our marriage, but not all at once. Not like a light going out. More like a room getting dimmer so slowly you don't realize you can't see anymore until you're bumping into things. She started saying she felt stuck. Not with me exactly, at least that's what she claimed. Just with life, with responsibility, with bills, with routine, with feeling like every day was the same. I listened. I tried. God, I tried. I booked us weekend getaways when money allowed it. I surprised her with flowers on random Tuesdays. I took days off just to spend time with her. When she wanted to start working out, I bought her a gym membership. When she talked about feeling burned out, I told her to take time with her friends. So when her best friend Amber suggested a girls' cruise to the Caribbean, I was the one who said yes before Vanessa even finished asking. I said, "Go. You need this." And I meant it. I helped her shop for swimsuits. I bought her a new suitcase because the zipper on her old one kept snagging. I even slipped $300 of extra cash into her makeup bag and wrote, "For something fun you'd never buy yourself." She cried when she found it. She told me I was the sweetest man she'd ever known. Funny how some people can look you in the eye while they sharpen the knife. The morning I dropped her at the port in Miami, she was buzzing with excitement. Amber and another friend, Kelsey, were already there with matching sun hats and drinks in plastic cups, like the vacation had started before the ship even moved. Vanessa hugged me tight before she boarded. She said, "Don't miss me too much." I smiled and told her, impossible those were the last honest words spoken in our marriage. The first 2 days she was gone, everything seemed normal. She texted me photos of turquoise water, overpriced cocktails, and her laughing with the girls by the pool. I replied with little updates from home. The dog knocked over the trash. Your mom called. The tomatoes in the backyard finally came in. Normal husband stuff. But on day 3, the rhythm changed. Her replies got shorter, then slower, then strange. I'd send, hope you're having fun, and get back, yep lol. I'd say, call me when you can, and she'd say, signal bad. At first, I didn't think much of it. She was on a cruise. She was busy. She was drinking and dancing and doing whatever women on girls' trips do when they finally get a break from ordinary life. I wanted her to enjoy her. That night, I was in our bedroom folding laundry when I heard the old iPad on her nightstand buzz. It was the one she used to stream shows while getting ready in the mornings. She hadn't used it in months. I honestly forgot it was even connected to anything. It buzzed again. Then again. I glanced over, mostly annoyed by the noise, and that tiny, casual moment split my life in half. A message preview lit up on the screen. Logan can still taste you. Last night was insane. I froze. Everything in me stopped. For one stupid second, I actually thought it had to be spam. A wrong number. Some joke. Some glitch. Then another message came in. Vanessa, stop. You're gonna make me blush in front of everyone. My hands went numb. I picked up the iPad so fast I almost dropped it. The message thread opened, and my whole body went cold. There it was. Dozens of texts. Some flirty. Some filthy. Some so intimate they felt like I was swallowing glass just reading them. He was a man she'd met on the ship the second night. Logan Vance, 42. Divorced, owns 3 fitness clubs in Tampa, according to his own bragging messages. Old enough to know better, slimy enough not to care, she had told him she was married. That part hurt more than I can explain, because it meant this wasn't some drunken mistake she was ashamed of. It was a choice she made in full view of my existence. There were messages about sneaking off after Amber passed out, messages about meeting on the adults-only deck, messages about his hands on her waist, the balcony of his cabin, how alive how she hadn't felt wanted in years, and then the message that took whatever was left of me and crushed it under its heel. Vanessa wrote, "My husband is a good man. He just doesn't make me feel anything anymore." I read that line at least 20 times. A good man. Not a cruel man. Not an absent man. Not a cheating man. Not a drunk. Not abusive. Not careless. Just good. Good enough to pay the bills. Good enough to hold her when she cried. Good enough to build a life with. Just not exciting enough to stay loyal to. I sat down on the edge of the bed because my knees gave out. I don't know how long I stayed there. I remember staring at our wedding photo on the dresser. She was smiling in that picture, the way people smile when they believe vows mean something. I remember hearing the air conditioner kick on and off. I remember thinking, over and over, this cannot be real. Then I kept scrolling. There were pictures. Not full nudity, but enough. Her in the black dress I told her was my favorite. His hand on her thigh under a dinner table, a mirror selfie in his cabin bathroom, with her lipstick smeared and that same wedding ring still on her finger. And then there was a voice note. I should have stopped. I didn't. Her voice came through the speakers in a half-whispered laugh. She said, "When I get home, I'm gonna have to pretend I'm exhausted, so Caleb won't touch me." I don't think I've ever felt pain like that. It wasn't loud pain. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. The kind that hollows you out from the inside. I sat there in the middle of our bedroom, surrounded by folded towels and her perfume on the dresser, and I realized the woman I loved had not only betrayed me, she had turned me into a joke. Not just to another man, to herself. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I didn't scream. People always talk about rage like it's fire. But mine wasn't fire. It was ice. It came over me slowly, clean and clear. Because in that moment I understood something that changed everything. If I confronted her right then, she would lie. She would say it didn't mean anything. She would blame alcohol, loneliness, grief, routine, me, the weather, Mercury being in retrograde, anything except her own character. And if I gave her that chance too early, she would go into survival mode. She'd delete messages, call friends, twist details, prepare excuses. No, if my marriage was dead, then I was going to bury it properly. So I took pictures of everything. Screenshots, voice notes, photos, dates, times. I forwarded the messages to my email and backed them up to a folder so secure it might as well have been a vault. Then I closed the iPad, set it back exactly where it had been, and went downstairs. I poured myself a glass of water because my hands were shaking too hard for whiskey. Then I called the only person I trusted to tell me the truth. My cousin Nate. He picked up on the second ring. The minute he heard my voice, he said, "What happened?" I told him. Not every detail. I couldn't. Some pain is too humiliating to say out loud. But enough. Enough for the silence on the other end to turn heavy. Enough for him to say, after a long pause, "Don't do anything stupid tonight. I'm coming over." He was at my house in 30 minutes. Sat with me at the kitchen table until almost 3 in the morning while I showed him the messages. Nate has known me since we were kids. He knows every version of me. The loud one, the broke one, the hopeful one, the grieving one. That night he met a version of me neither of us had seen before. Cold, he asked me what I wanted to do. I said, I want her to feel exactly what she made me feel. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said something that probably saved my life. "No, you don't, because this feeling would destroy a person. What you want is justice, and that takes patience." The next morning I called an attorney. Her name was Elise Harper. Sharp, calm, expensive, and worth every single dollar. I told her everything. She asked practical questions while my heart was still bleeding all over the room. Whose name was on the house? How our accounts were structured? Whether we had children? Whether I lived in an at-fault or no-fault state? Whether there were assets, debts, retirement accounts, joint credit cards? She didn't care about the romance of betrayal. She cared about the mechanics of ending it cleanly, and that's exactly what I needed. By noon, I had a plan. Not a reckless revenge fantasy. A real one. The kind built with paperwork, proof, timing, and silence. First, I moved half of the money from our joint checking into a separate account under my name, exactly as Elise advised, leaving a full record so nobody could accuse me of hiding funds. Not stealing, protecting. Second, I canceled the secondary card Vanessa used for personal spending because several charges from the cruise had already started hitting our account, including what looked very much like drinks, spa access, and specialty dining for two. For two. On my money. Third, I changed the passwords on every account tied directly to my business. My company payroll, vendor accounts, tax folders, cloud storage, all of it. Not because she had used them before, but because I had just learned I did not know who my wife really was. Fourth, I packed her things. Not all of them. I wasn't throwing her life onto the lawn like some cheap movie. I boxed them carefully. Her clothes, her shoes, her makeup, the framed photos from her side of the dresser, the blanket her grandmother made her, even the seashell candle she loved in winter. I put every box in the guest room. I left our bedroom exactly the way it was, except for one thing. I removed every trace of her from my side, her hair tie from my nightstand. Gone. Her phone charger from my outlet. Gone. The lavender lotion she kept on my dresser. Gone. I needed the room to stop lying to me. Then I waited. And those final 2 days were some of the longest of my life. She kept texting like nothing had happened. A selfie in a beach hat, a photo of the sunset. One message that said, "Miss you, babe." I looked at those words until they blurred. Miss you. I wondered if she sent that before or after his hands were on her. I wondered how many versions of herself she kept inside her. One for me. One for him. One for the girls. One for social media. I replied politely. Short, normal, controlled. That was the part I think bothered me most afterward. How easy it was for both of us to pretend. The night before she came home, she called me from the ship. Her voice was warm and playful. She said, "I can't wait to see you." I leaned against the kitchen counter and listened to the woman who had shattered me perform love like she deserved an award. I said, "What was the best part of the trip?" She laughed, and without hesitation she said, "Just being with the girls. Relaxing, remembering who I am outside of everything." That lie was so clean, so practiced, so effortless. In that moment, whatever heartbreak was left inside me hardened into something else. Acceptance. She wasn't sorry. She was strategic. And once you see that in someone, love doesn't. The next day I drove to the airport to pick her up. Yes, I picked her up. Because revenge doesn't work if you announce it too early. I stood near baggage claim while she came down the escalator in white sneakers and a loose tan sweater, looking like every husband's welcome home fantasy. She smiled the second she saw me, ran up and hugged me. She smelled like expensive lotion and, "You look tired," I told her. She pulled back and laughed. "I am exhausted." There it was. The exact lie from the voice note. I smiled so slightly she didn't notice. On the drive home, she talked the whole time. About the weather, the excursions, Amber getting drunk and falling asleep on a lounge chair, Kelsey flirting with a bartender, some old couple they met at dinner. She had a story for everything. Everything except the truth. At one point she put her hand on my thigh and said, "Thank you for letting me go." I really needed that. I almost pulled the car over right there, but I didn't. I just said, "I know." When we got home, she dragged her suitcase inside and looked around like she expected the house to greet her too. I told her I had one thing to take care of. Then I walked into the living room and turned on the TV. She frowned. "What are you doing?" I picked up the remote and opened the folder I had loaded onto the screen. The first image filled the room. A screenshot of Logan's text. "Can still taste you." Vanessa didn't breathe. The color drained out of her face so fast it was almost frightening. I clicked to the next one. Then, the next. Then, the photo of her in the mirror with her wedding ring visible. Then, the message where she called me a good man she couldn't feel anything with. Then, finally, the voice note. Her own whisper filled the room. "When I get home, I'm gonna have to pretend I'm exhausted so Caleb won't touch me." The silence after that was so deep I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Vanessa looked like someone had ripped the floor out from under her. She started shaking her head before she even had words. "Caleb," I held up my hand. "No," she burst into tears instantly. Not slow tears, not grief. "Panic, it's not what you think." I actually laughed. A short, empty sound. "Then, for once in your life, Vanessa, tell me what it is." She started talking fast. Too much to follow. It was a mistake. She was drunk. She felt disconnected. She never meant for it to happen. It only happened twice. She hated herself. She was going to tell me. She didn't know how. Every sentence sounded like a bargain for survival. Not one sounded like remorse. I listened until she ran out of excuses. Then I set a thick envelope on the coffee table in front of her. She looked at it. Then at me. "What is that?" "Divorce papers." She stared at me like the word belonged to another universe. I nodded toward the hallway. "Your things are in the guest room. You can stay there tonight if you want, but you're not sleeping next to me." Tomorrow morning, your sister is coming to pick you up." Her mouth fell open. "You called my sister?" "I called everyone who needed the truth before you could rewrite it." That part was the revenge. Not cruelty. Truth. While she was in the shower before dinner, I had already sent a concise, cold message to the people who mattered. Her sister, Lauren. Her mother and father. My parents. And Amber's husband, because I suspected he deserved to know more than he did. I attached proof to exactly 2 people, Lauren and her father. Not every filthy detail. Just enough that Vanessa could never paint me as insecure, controlling, paranoid, or crazy. Enough that if she cried to anyone about how complicated things got, the facts would already be standing in the room ahead of her. She collapsed onto the couch. "Please don't do this." I looked at her, and for the first time in 11 years I saw a stranger wearing my wife's face. "You already did." She tried everything, crying, begging, swearing she loved me, saying the cruise was just an escape, saying Logan meant nothing, saying she would quit her job, go to therapy, do anything. Anything. That word haunted me. Because if she would do anything now, why couldn't she do the one thing that mattered before? Be loyal. At some point she said, "You're really throwing away 11 years over one mistake." That was when I knew I would never love her again. I stepped closer and said, very quietly, "No, I'm refusing to throw away the rest of my life over your choices." Her sister arrived the next morning at 9. Lauren looked exhausted and embarrassed and angry in the way good people get angry when they realize someone they love has become small. Vanessa came downstairs with swollen eyes, clutching a duffel. She kept looking at me like she was waiting for me to stop the process, to break, to save her from the consequence of herself. I didn't. Lauren loaded the bags into her SUV in silence. Before Vanessa got in, she turned back toward me. "I never stopped loving you." I believe that, in her own selfish way, she thought it was true. But some people confuse love with comfort, with history, with having a safe place to land when their excitement burns out. So I said the last kind thing I was ever going to say to her. That's the problem. You loved me just enough to stay, but not enough to protect me. Then I closed the front door, and for the first time since I found those messages, I let myself fall apart. Not because I wanted, but because losing an illusion hurts almost as much as losing a person. For weeks, life felt unreal. I went to work, signed invoices, answered emails, pretended to function. Then I'd come home to a quiet house and feel every wall echo with what used to be there. There were moments I hated her, moments I hated him, moments I hated myself for not seeing it sooner. But healing, I learned, doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives in tiny acts of self-respect. The first night I slept through without checking my phone. The first Sunday I ordered Italian food for one and realized the silence didn't own me. The first time I laughed at something Nate said and didn't feel guilty for surviving. The divorce moved faster than Vanessa expected. Infidelity didn't turn the state into a movie courtroom, but the evidence mattered in ways she hadn't thought about. It mattered in negotiations. It mattered in credibility. It mattered when she tried to fight for things she had no moral right to frame as equal sacrifice. She cried during mediation, said I was being cold. Her attorney tried to soften details, call it a lapse in judgment. Elise shut that down with facts. Facts are brutal that way. Vanessa ended up moving into a one-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. Logan, as it turned out, disappeared the minute real life showed up. A man like that always does. Last I heard, he stopped replying once she started talking about how unhappy she was and how much she had risked for him. Apparently, betrayal feels sexy only when it belongs to someone else's marriage. But that wasn't the best part. That wasn't the revenge. The revenge came 6 months later. By then, I had painted the bedroom, replaced the couch, and turned the guest room into a home office. I was sleeping better, eating better, thinking clearer. I had scars, yes, but they were no longer open wounds. One Friday afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. It was Vanessa. Her voice was soft, fragile, nothing like the woman who had come home from that cruise with lies still warm on her lips. She asked if we could talk. I said there wasn't much left to say. Then she started crying. Really crying. Not manipulative tears this time. Broken ones. She told me she had made the biggest mistake of her life. That the apartment felt that her friends had faded because nobody wants to sit too long with the reality of what they encouraged. That her parents were polite now, but disappointed in a way that never fully leaves a room. That she kept replaying our life and realizing too late how safe it had been, how rare it had been, how deeply I had loved her. Then, she said the words she probably should have said before she boarded. I didn't know what I had until I destroyed it. I stood in my kitchen and let the silence settle between us. Outside, the wind was moving through the oak trees in the yard. Inside, my coffee had gone cold beside me. There was a time I would have crossed fire for that woman. A time I would have forgiven things I had no business forgiving. But betrayal changes the architecture of your heart. It teaches you that love without respect is just slow poison. So I said, I knew what you had. That's why I protected it. You're the one who treated it like it was disposable. She broke down harder after that, and in that moment I finally understood what real revenge was. It wasn't screaming. It wasn't revenge cheating. It wasn't embarrassing her online or ruining her job or turning my pain into spectacle. It was becoming the man she could never reach again. The man who loved fully, got broken deeply, and still refused to become bitter enough to crawl back into a lie. The man who made her live with the truth she created. I told her I hoped she got therapy. I told her I hoped she became honest enough to never do this to anyone else. And then, I told her not to call again. When I hung up, I felt free. That's the part people don't tell you. Freedom doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just exhales. A year after the cruise, I went back to Miami. Not to relive anything. Not to prove a point. My cousin Nate had been bugging me for months to take a trip, and I finally said yes. We sat by the water the night before our flight, drinking cheap beer and watching cruise ships glow against the dark, like floating cities full of strangers and secrets. He asked me if I ever thought about her. I told him yes, but not the way I used to. I don't think about getting even anymore. I think about the version of me who stood at that baggage claim still carrying love in his chest even after it had been insulted. I think about the man who could have chosen destruction and chose dignity instead. And I think about the lesson that cost me a marriage, but gave me my life back. Never beg someone to value what your loyalty already proved. Never compete with chaos when peace is what you bring. And never confuse being chosen with being respected. Because some people will hold your heart in their hands and still go searching for thrills with fingers that don't know your middle name. Let them. Let them lose you. Let them discover too late that stable love was not boring. It was sacred. Vanessa thought that cruise was freedom, a week of no responsibility, no routine, no consequences. She thought passion was whatever made her pulse race in the... She thought marriage would still be waiting where she left it, like shoes by the front door. But real love is not a storage unit for selfish people. It is not a shelter you betray and then return to when the weather changes. The day she cheated on me, she didn't just sleep with another man. She gambled with the one person who had never played about her. And she lost. That was my revenge. Not that she cried. Not that Logan disappeared. Not that her family knew. Those things happened, yes, but they were consequences. My revenge was bigger. My revenge was that I did not let her betrayal turn me into someone small. I did not chase her. I did not beg. I did not bargain with a woman who had already priced my worth below a thrill on a cruise ship. I stood up in the ashes of the life we built and chose myself. And if you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever loved someone so deeply that their lies made you question your own reflection, hear me when I say this. You do not heal by winning them back. You heal by refusing to lose yourself. So when people ask me what happened to my marriage, I don't tell them my wife went on a girls' cruise, and I tell them the truth. My wife went looking for excitement, and I found myself respect. She came home expecting forgiveness. Instead, she met consequences. She thought she was returning to a husband. She was actually returning to a man who had finally seen her clearly. And once a lie has been dragged into the light, it never gets to call itself love again.